Hey, it's Joe Glines, the Automator, and you're about to watch a video that has Isaias and Irfan, and Isaias is explaining some core concepts in classes and better ways to build them so you don't get yourself stuck in a corner. Really, really great. It's a long video. We'll probably append it to our course on classes because it's really great lecture. It's got a lot of advanced topics in it. So, and keep in mind, this was being done to help level up Irfan to work on a specific project. So even though there is very project specific stuff in it, most of it's very general that you can apply to anything. But it covers a lot of the fundamentals and how to build classes strategically. So please like the video if you learned something. It really helps us out. If you're new to classes, check out our Intro to Classes course. Have a great day. Cheers.
All right. So now I'm sharing my screen. I think you're not sharing, right? All right. So I created a proof of concept, which is what the video you saw was all about. But I want you to avoid one thing. And because I want you to avoid that, then I'm going to give you some context before I tell you what is the main plan about this. On that email, I think we have an email here. He is talking about 3 layers of the code. There is what is called the main menu, then the event builder, and then the toolbox. But before you dive into any of this code, let's talk a little bit about the way how we code, the goal of it, and why I would actually architecture something instead of just coding it. All right. So there are 2 ways of coding. Okay. And we have talked about this before. There's the fast approach. You open a file, start coding, testing stuff. And once you get the results that you want, the script is working. And usually that is for code that is linear. It's just like, I'm going to do 2, 3 things. They're going to happen in a very specific order. And opening a file, typing it out, testing, it works, you're good. That is simple, and that's one way of coding. When you go into this type of coding, though, any decisions you make on this level will very much affect what happens on this level. Okay? So if you get something wrong in here, it will make this step really hard. Well, it will make it hard, right? And the last one is going to be really hard to implement. Okay. So that's the reason why it is very important at this point. Okay. When you're building a system that is more complex than just a few steps, then it is a good idea, especially if you're giving this code to a client, to spend time here. And basically before this, actually what we're going to do is talk a little bit about what happens before this, before even writing one line of coding here, because there's a bunch of headaches that you're going to have if you don't do it right. And the other problem is, even when you do it right, even when you plan, even when you do stuff right, and even though you made your plan, you test it out, it works, even then, any decisions you make here, they are going to create headaches down the line, even if it was the correct decision. So what we want to do is minimize those, okay? So they're going to happen anyways. So what we're trying to do is minimize the errors. All right. With that in mind, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about when you're architecturing this type of code, more or less what you're thinking about. This is when you're building a house, and I want you to remember, I'm not an expert on this. I have learned this the hard way. There are people who study this thing that whatever I tell you, there's some people who are going to say, well, he's wrong on that. Okay. So take this just as a guidance and not how it is. It is like this because I have had the problems, but that doesn't mean that that's always going to be the case. All right. But mostly when you're going to build a house, you actually build the bottom part in a very specific way. And actually, how do you call that in English, Joe? Like
Base,
not the
base,
base.
Foundation.
It's not the basement, the foundation.
blueprint, a
The
foundation.
foundation. Right. What happens with the foundation is if your foundation has problems, right? So you have a little bit of crack in here. What's going to happen is when you go ahead and try to build on top of that, what's going to happen? Well, this side is going to fail. Does that make sense? Encoding is very much the same, in which you're going to be building something at the bottom that is exactly what you're going to use to build the second layer of your code. And then after you build this part, then you're going to have a third layer, all right? And that third layer is what I would call the interface that the user sees. By the time you are on this spot, which is what the user is looking at, you have your interfaces or classes, and those interfaces and classes are built around basic functions, all right? So that's how I would label it. Again, this is just from experience and some other things, but many other software engineers will gonna tell you something similar. These, let's call it units, okay? And you can think about them as functions, like the basic actions. These guys are very important. If your units or your basic functions fail, it doesn't matter what you do up here, everything is going to fail. All right. So what you want to do is that your units down here are good enough, stable enough for you to do whatever job you need to be done. Examples of units. The message box function, that is a unit. Have you ever have a bug with the message box function?
Yeah, when it pops up, you need to deal with it.
Okay, that is not a bug. That is exactly how a message box works. It is not a problem. That is the point of it. That's the reason why sometimes we use tooltips instead of message boxes, or actually we create our notify class because we don't want to deal with that, right?
If that message boxes appear from a GUI event and then you do not using on dialog box, then yeah, it will hide behind the GUI. And
now sometimes that's exactly what you want. If you hit delete on something that you cannot recover, then you definitely want a message box that stops everything. Yes. And it doesn't move forward until you say yes or no, right?
Yes.
So sometimes you want that. That's when you use a message box. Yeah. Sometimes you just want to be notified that something happened. Then you don't want the message box. You want probably a function that you create or a different method like a tooltip. Let's talk about another one. File select. Okay. How many times have you got a bug with file select or file append or file open? Most of the functions. Right. Go ahead.
Yeah, file select are good if they are implemented properly. Then you have they work fine. But if you miss something, like if user do not select and your script thinks that it selected something and tried to handle that,
right.
That's the bug.
But let me put it this way, because those are behaviors of the function. That's totally normal. What I'm saying is, how many times you got a crash of AutoHotkey because the file select function was not working properly?
I never had a crash.
But
you see what I mean?
But if you listen to people, on the forum, or AutoHotkey's buggy, right? But it's their code, not the file select.
Right. It's mostly the way how they implemented the logic. It's not the function itself.
The foundation is solid. If
right. Let me put it this other way. Okay. Let me try it this other way. When you tell the mouse move function to move the mouse from one place to another, how many times do you get the problem that it didn't move the mouse? It usually moves it, right?
Yeah,
I would say 99% of the time it moves the mouse. You tell it move the mouse to X and Y, and it moves it. Now, whether the coordinate system was wrong and it moved it to the wrong place, that's not a problem with the function. The function moves the mouse, right?
That's the problem with the
point.
Code.
Right. That's the point that I'm trying to make. Units and your basic functions should be so stable that if you know that you use that function, it very, very likely is not going to fail. All right.
Yeah.
Of course, we're human. There might be some issues. So basically, errors can happen, but most of the time, 99% of the time, they don't fail, right? Now,
in simple, you can say we need a solid foundation.
exactly. So why do we use AutoHotkey for automation? Because the units and the functions that AutoHotkey gives me to perform certain tasks are really stable. For creating a hotkey, or for creating a hot string, or for moving the mouse, or for sending keystrokes. Those are things that are mostly very stable. The one that we have a lot of bugs with is the send function, for example. Some operating systems don't send the events, and you see a lot of threads in forums regarding that.
It tries to do its job perfectly, but it's the one
it
that
has problems, it has limitations, basically.
No, the one that receives the text has the issues.
Exactly. But then it makes the function unreliable. And that's why Joe and I, we have said for a long time, we avoid sending keystrokes. We avoid moving the mouse because it's unreliable. So if your units are wrong, then the next steps of your code might have issues. So that's the main idea that I wanted to kind of like transmit. We use mostly, I particularly try to use the AutoHotkey units as much as possible because mostly they are very stable, and whatever I'm gonna do next, they help me out. But sometimes you need a very specific action that requires you to open a file, click a very specific location, and then do other actions. And I just want one function to do that. So I create a unit that does that, and that it does it very well, so that later on when I create the other steps of my code, then at that point, I know that that function works well. Now, the second part here is what I would call an interface. And again, those are names that you would find very often in other languages, that they mean very specific things. In AutoHotkey, we don't have differences between classes and interfaces. So for us, class, if you create a class, that's going to be your interface later on. So for now, think about them as the same thing. I'm talking about very different things, but for now, for AutoHotkey specifically, that's what I mean. Now, the interface is the type of code that I'm going to be writing later based on some units and functions that will perform the actions that I want. And this interface, the main idea with a class is for you to avoid certain problems. Let's say that you have this. Let me show you. Where is this guy? Okay. So let's say that I have one function that one of the things is that it modifies a handle. All right. So a handle to a window, win get active, or well, win active. Okay, and that gives me the handle of a window, and it will act upon those. But now I have another function later on that now I also act upon a handle, which might be the same window that I want, or might be a different one. The main concept is, oh my God, I want these two functions to work with a handle, okay? And they are both working on the same program, chrome.exe, okay? So I want the handle of chrome.exe, all right? For chrome.exe. And this other function also does that. The first intuition is, okay, let's go ahead and grab this and make it a global function instead. So now I don't have duplicate code, and now they both can use the same handle, all right? For different stuff, okay? So one of them is gonna activate Chrome and then look for a specific website, and the other one is gonna activate Chrome, but it's actually going to refresh the page. They both act on the same handle. Well, this causes one little bit of a problem. I like it that they can share it, but now when I create function 3, now I have to be careful, because if function 3 is gonna have open also a handle, but what it does is that it modifies the handle, now it's gonna break two functions, okay?
Yeah.
So now we got this issue in which a global variable is tricky, because now you have to keep track of, okay, if I modify it here, I'm gonna break 2 functions, 5 functions, 10 functions, okay? That's where a class comes in. We say, okay, class 1, this is Chrome, is going to act upon that handle, and it's going to share the handle between these functions. But when I have a different class, class edge, now I can safely think, okay, when I refer to this handle, now I know that I'm not going to break the one that has to do with Chrome. Now I have edge, okay? And now I can still use the same variable name, but I know for a fact that I'm not going to mess with these methods because they relate to another class. That's what classes are. And basically, that's the main idea. So again, notice we have units, okay? That unit right there is basically, hold on. Oh, yeah, that's it. It's
methods and properties.
Is when activate, is message box. Those are my units, okay? Those are my units or functions that I know for a fact they will very likely work. So I'm building my interface on top of these units because I know they work. And one of those units could be a function that I created, my function, okay? But I know that that function is probably never going to fail, okay? So those are my units. The class now becomes an interface so that later on, when I'm writing code, it is easy for me to say Chrome function 1, and I know what is happening, okay? Because this method belongs to Chrome, and I know that that method is never going to mess with the handle of the edge class. And I know you know this, okay? You have done this, all right? Now, one of the things that I do want to tell you about this is nesting or class extensions.
Yes.
When we do this, the main idea is this main class is going to have some basic functionality that is going to be shared across multiple instances of it. So that's where you create a class browser, right? That's the thing. And there's some things that are shared between Chrome and others. That's where extends comes in place, right? So we know all of that. I'm not going to go deeper into this, but here's the problem. This is the part that I did want to talk about. When you're creating a class, you want the class to be as compact and small as possible. And I want it to be something that I can easily remember. And if I don't remember, I don't have to scroll through 1,000 functions. An example of this is not a bad example, okay? This is just that it just happens to be one of those classes, all right? Is the UIA library. Okay, so just off the top of your head, okay? Just from the top of your head, how many functions does the UIA library has? Do you know?
Oh, it has thousands, I think. Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say thousands, but you have so many. Okay, out of those many, how many of them have you used?
Actually, they are being used. He's trying multiple versions of the UIA and
very good.
Yeah.
No. But how many have you used? You,
yeah,
Irfan, how many do you?
I use the one that is a basic action, and then it tries multiple versions because different Windows version does different things and different
very
UI
good.
handle
Here's,
different.
Going
so
back to the question,
take care of all
as a number, just give me a number. How many functions out of the UIA class do you use?
I just use the basic core functionality. Like
And how many are those? Like 3? I guess they're not that many, right?
Yeah, there are 7, but I use 3 of them mostly.
Okay, perfect.
7
That's basically what I wanted to say. So this class exposes so many things that you're basically not going to use. Okay. Yeah. It is not his fault. Okay. But if you have control over the class, what you want is not to expose these things. For example, have you ever encoded the path? Have you ever decoded the path? Have you ever done a runtime ID to string? I don't think so. These are functions that are local to what he does that have nothing to do with what you do. Okay. That's the main part here. This is a very, very dense class. Again, it's not his fault.
Yeah,
but
we can
write
extend
a simpler, right? Or we can
do
kind of like
multiple
modify it, right?
Yeah.
Which is what
he is also doing, extending that to UIA base. So UIA has different bases for different UIs. So
right.
he's trying all of those different UIs
So,
and different.
what I do want to say is this. You remember what happened to the WebView 2 library? The WebView 2 library is so complex that somebody created another library that makes it simpler. All right?
Simpler, yeah.
So you don't want to do that. When you're creating your code, you have to think about it and think about it to make it as simple as possible so that it is easy to use. And that's the end goal. And that is not easy. All right. That is not simple. And there are some problems like the UIA library that it doesn't matter if you try to make it simpler, it's not going to be possible. Okay. So it's going to be a little bit complicated for you to get it right. But that's the goal. What we want is that one of the limitations that we have is the extensions that we use for AutoHotkey, and that might make your life a little bit harder. So you have to take those things into account. I will show you a situation on that in a minute, but I think you're getting the main idea. We are trying to avoid classes that are so big that they are hard to remember. Even and on top of that, they are that some functions have such a different syntax that you cannot remember it. For example, the find element function, okay, behaves in one way, okay, that you give it a condition, but the find element from path, or element from path, I think, element from path is so different that I never remember which one is which one and how do I do one or do the other. Because this one is a string, but the other one is objects. So
yeah,
the syntax for one and the other are so different that you have to know them both, and then they're so different that there's a lot of things to learn about each of them. You want to avoid that. You want the interface to be consistent so that if I know how to use one function, then I should be able to at least have an idea of how to use the next one. In this case, that's not the case. You have to learn how to use paths, and that has a lot of rules. Like you have to use commas, or actually this other type, or you can use objects, or is it an array? You can do so many things with this one. But then when you look at the other one, find element, there's so many things that you can do with the find element that then you have to learn it, how the condition works, okay? How you can put lowercase matching, regular string matching. It is very complicated. You want to try to avoid that. In his case, he couldn't do anything about it. That's how the original library is, all right? Ours, well, it will be difficult by default because the original library is difficult, but that's what we're trying to avoid. If you have the power to create your class in a way that it makes your life easier, okay? And by that, I mean, not too many methods. And the way how you define one method should be very similar to the other. You will make your life easier. And if you add the VS Code annotations and the autocomplete, right? It will make your life way easier as well. So that whenever you reach to the top, now this is the user interface, okay? And by that, I mean GUIs, right? And command line interface, and others APIs, right? Or program binary API, you know, all of the other parts, well, no, not that one. That one doesn't go there. But things like this, okay? These are things that now the user is going to interact with, and they don't know nothing about code. By the time you reach this point, it should be so simple and simplified that a user who knows nothing about the code should be able to work with your code. And when an error occurs, your interfaces, classes, and APIs down here, they handle the errors so that at the end, only very critical stuff go to the client, to the user. And when they look at it, they can make a decision and my code can continue. It's not like an error that the whole program stopped, okay? So that's what we want to avoid. Here, we can face some issues that then here we're gonna handle them in a way that if it is absolutely critical for the user to know about it, then we let him know and give him a choice. And depending on the choice, we continue execution. It's never a critical error that when it gets here, like the whole script stops and nothing happens. Like when something like that happens, you missed something. That's when you get the errors like the file cannot be opened and now the script has to reload completely. Like you usually don't want that. If the file couldn't be opened, I can tell the user, hey, the file that I was trying to write cannot be opened. Can you give me another file? Oh, it is here. Okay, now I'm going to write to that one. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. We don't want extreme errors in here, which we call exceptions, panics, errors in AutoHotkey. We don't want those. What we want for the user is just a dialogue. Okay? Do you want to do that? Yes or no? If you don't want to do it, well, we continue just fine with another part of the code. All the decisions that you make down here and down here, they are going to guide how this part is going to go. And many times, this doesn't go well just because we made some choices down here. And again, this is unavoidable. It doesn't matter how much you plan. It doesn't matter how much you try to be good at coding. It will happen. It's just how coding works. But what we're trying to do is minimize that so that when it does happen, it's just one person out of 20 instead of everybody having the same problem. All right. So with that said, let me look at one problem that I created myself in this area. Okay, so I do have units and functions that were very great, but I made bad decisions here that then created a bunch of problems in my user interface. Well, if I open up something like the code that I have for Jeff, you will notice and you will see the change. When I face those errors, what I do is that I change my behavior. If you keep making the same mistake, then there's no point on you learning. So my point is, I had the issue, I had the headache, I noticed I don't want to do that. Now I will change how I work. And once I do that, then I teach everybody else, hey, this is what happened to me. So whenever I tell your code, hey, dude, you're doing this, which is a problem, I don't want you to feel it like a criticism. It's that I had the issue myself, like many, many times, all right? So yeah. Check this out. I have GUIs here. So at that time, I already said, let me separate GUIs from other code and so on and so forth. And I have, in here, I have what I call the core class. So my core class calls other classes, okay? So this method calls a different class with a given method. That way, if I later on say, you know what, this class is not good anymore, I can switch that to a different class without having to change my code. My code stays the same. I don't have to worry about it because what I'm calling is this method all the time, everywhere. I'm calling the show sequence options. But the way how I show it or whatever I do can change, but that doesn't break my code. That's the main idea. Okay, perfect. But let me show you. I had this class right here, which is the main class. At that time, what I was thinking is, okay, I'm going to be creating a GUI class. So I extended the GUI class to that class, which I was calling the default because it was the main screen that I had. Then I did a lot of interface stuff, blah, 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 and had a lot of functions, loading, setting the status, importing the companies and stuff like that. Okay, fine. But then once I created my interface, so to speak, so again, I'm thinking about it in this area right here. I'm thinking about an interface that I can use in my code. Then what I did is create an instance of the class. That usually is a good way of coding in other languages. In AutoHotkey, it creates a problem. So then I moved away from this type of coding of creating instances of classes, not because they're wrong. They're not wrong. That's totally fine. You can do it how many times you want, and it will work fine. I have been running this program for 2 years. But now whenever I'm coding, I reach this. I want to go to the main load function. What do you usually do? Oh, you hit F12 to go there, don't you? Well, if you hit F12, it will usually go there. You know what happens when you, yeah, that's because I'm in the file and it was loaded. But you know what happens when you have a main in a different file that is not the prospect finder, right? I think it has happened to you. I want to go to the set status. It doesn't go because it says that this hasn't been defined.
So if you are working in the main file and class is written in there, so instance would work for F12, but
later on it won't, because I opened the file and it was loaded. But if I didn't open the file, right? And,
if your class has static methods and you are using the class statically, then you can.
Yeah, if you do it statically, no problem, right? Yeah. But as soon as you try to do it with the
instance,
yes, as soon as you do it with the instance, then that becomes a nightmare. And what happens is, whenever you are, whenever you're trying to get to the bottom of meta, here, there it goes. No definition found for this one. That's what you're gonna hit. Now what happens? Now I have the problem that I want to go to that function, but it is an instance. Now I wanted to know what the set status was doing because I got an error on that. How do I get there? Oh, well, I have to go to main, okay? So I have to go to main, hit F12. Oh, look at that. It didn't go to the right spot because this is where main is. Okay, how do I go to that spot? Okay. Oh, now I have to go to the main file, which is prospect finder, I guess.
ASM is using static classes.
Right. So now look at this. Now I'm in the main file, so I can now go to the click F12 where this was defined. Okay. So now in here, now I have to try to jump to where set status was. Okay. Now I see it. Oh, look at that. It was just, okay, now I have to jump to that one. What the hell is that one? That looks like a status bar. Okay, but where was it defined? Now I have to jump to that one. Okay, so now here, oh, look at that. That is actually a main that sets us. Okay, so I have to now find that one. You see how many steps I had to go to find out what it really was? So whatever that is, then I realized, yeah, that's not gonna work because right now.
Let me show you a class from ASM.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so are you looking at my screen?
Yeah, now we can see it.
So this is a menu.hk. So all the menus are being built here.
Yep.
Fed to the few are fed to the main GUI, and there are multiple GUIs. All the menus are handled here.
Built from this space. Okay.
Yeah. And then multiple classes are being triggered from here. So whenever you hit F12, you can go there.
It should just jump there. Exactly.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so that's exactly a very important thing. So if you stop sharing, let me show you this back. Okay. Once I noticed how many steps just to get to one thing I took, then I realized, yeah, this way doesn't work for me. How should I do it? Then I decided on a different way. Okay. And now this looks different. This is a class that manages the GUI. So I make a GUI and have it in a variable in here.
Line number 5. I do that a lot.
Exactly. So now this is being managed in here. And later on, whenever say, hey, do something for us outside of the code, whenever I get something or call a function or I create something, I don't literally have to call the thing over and over again. I just have what I call syntax sugar that says, hey, for the sequence manager view, wait until the thing is idle. That's it. Now it will figure out what that means. It will find out what the filter is, what I'm looking for. And then when the filter starts, it will figure out which list view I'm talking about. It will do everything. My code just says wait idle. And that means that later on, when I'm in my core code, in my prospect finder or something else, I will not code anything with UI, whatever. No. I will just say, hey, wait for it to be idle. And I know that it will do what I want. So with that in mind, and I know that you have this in mind, what I want to do is create an interface that is what I call shallow. How many functions does it have? 2, 4, 6. That's it. 6 methods. Those are the things that I'm going to do with this view, with this GUI. That's it. I'm not going to do more than that. If I'm going to do something else, I'm going to let it automatically handle it for me. If I have the property, I call that property. If it doesn't have the property, don't do anything. Who is doing that? The UI, which is a GUI class. So I can do the default stuff if I wanted to, but mostly what I'm going to do is just these six things. And once I have my interface set up with very few things, I don't have to remember much. When I'm doing my other code, I don't have to remember 10,000 things. I just know that I can do these 6 things. Does that make sense? So that's the end goal. But look, I changed my approach because the other one was not working. That's what we're going to keep doing. So in the end, while you're doing stuff in that manner, what is going to happen is that in the end, when you get to the GUI, when you go to the command line, when you build an API that other programs can use, it's going to be easy for you to write because everything else is into place. That's it. That was the basics that I wanted to cover. Now, for simple scripts, few actions, also for testing, if you want to test if one function is going to work out, don't do all of this. All of this, then it would be over engineering the stuff. Okay, don't go that route. If you're exploring, how do I do this? Oh, let me write one function. Let me do this. Don't do this. All this. All right, because you are not really building something that is meant to be stable. You're just exploring. You're just testing. But once you test, take the time to go back and say, okay, let me divide this into very specific functions and units that my classes and interfaces are going to call in a very specific way that is very limited, and it is just the things that I need for that action, so that later on, when I create my GUI, when I create my command line interface, it's easy for me to write the code. Okay?
Let me say this in simple word. I would say, let me create an interface with a solid base.
Exactly. Basically. Now, what did I do? Now, going back now to the actual topic, I wanted you to have all of this in mind so that you can see what I did. Because we have this project, which might be in the future, and I just laid down some groundwork. But the groundwork is going to change, okay?
It's very meaningful, and yeah, like it's kind of a designing a car simulator.
Okay, exactly. But here's the part. Check this out. You will see how it makes my job easier later on, right? So I started with this. This is a library. And because it is a library, I use very specific ways of including other libraries. If you use the wrong way, which is like this, you will have issues later, okay?
Yeah.
For testing and for other stuff. So try not to do that when it is a library. If it is the actual code, yeah, that's fine, you can do it. But for libraries, I would definitely stick to this sort of hard-coded path. It is still relative, but it is relative to the current file. That's what the period means.
Yes.
Because this is a library, and when this library is going to be included, if this library gets included and you have the bracket notation, then those have that they're going to be in the wrong spot and so many other problems. So that's why I did that. Now, the main class, this is the one that people are going to use. It does nothing. The only thing it does is that it chooses the object.
Yeah.
This is a very well-known pattern called singleton patterns, right? It doesn't matter what the name is. The idea is this just chooses the correct class. And actually, I haven't added the singleton part of this pattern, which is I have to check if I already created one instance of the class. And if you already have an instance of the class, then you should not create a new class because you already have it. I just want you to have one class. That's it. One instance. That's what I wanted to do. I haven't finished that part yet, but at least I'm letting you choose what I have. And if the base is the one that I'm thinking, then it would stop and say, hey, you already have it. So I'm not going to give you a new one. But not a hotkey, that is a little bit tricky. But the only thing is, notice how that's the only thing it does. For the next part, when I say I'm going to add a second game, it's going to be very easy for me to just duplicate the code. Say now this is a different game.
Change the name and that,
And now this is going to be a different class. Okay?
Yeah.
And the code didn't break because anything that is related to project cars hasn't been touched. Right? And it's going to be okay. So
and you are switching the base too.
Exactly. So I'm switching this guy as well.
Okay.
Right.
So the base only changed for this instance because class is not in static.
Exactly. And I don't want it static because of certain reasons. I will show you in a second. Yeah. But so when you build it this way, it allows me to stack more games. All right. But for each game, I will have a different file. So this other file is going to be added, Aceto Corsa.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I will work with that game separate from the others. All right. But I will show you something. Then we go to the basic. This one here is the game interface, basically. And that is the interface that all my other games are going to use. Notice that at the end, I am using units. This is the send event function.
Mouse.
The click function. Okay. The keyboard function. Okay. Notice that this menu here, this is a special class. This just calls the game, the keyboard. And I'm just saying, in the menu, I want to go up. In the menu, I want to go down. in the menu, I want to select. And basically, in a menu, those are the only things that you do. I don't think you're gonna go diagonal, okay? I don't think you're gonna do something weird. It's just in a menu, I want to do that, okay? So I now defined whenever I want to interact with a menu, those are the 5 options that all of my games are gonna have.
Aziz, I have a question. So
Yep.
your class game has a keyboard, mouse, and menu classes.
Okay.
That can be the two above can turn into methods, because right now they are creating multiple instances.
I will tell you why I did it that way in a second. Okay. So the problem here is this is a thing. I want to talk about the keyboard thing. That's an object that I'm thinking of. Later on, I might do things with the keyboard that I'm not thinking about. Oh, turn caps lock on. Maybe I want to do that. You see? So those are things that I want to do with the keyboard, but I haven't decided on those yet. I know that I want to keep the possibility open. That's the reason why I made it a class. Because if I make it a function, if I made it a function or a method, I closed that door. And that's the key.
But right now on line 13, if that was like, keyboard.send up, then it will make sense for me. Right now you're just creating instances.
I'm not creating an instance right there. Well, they are temporary instances because they die as soon as this thing goes down. But it depends on what I want to do later. And actually, the other thing is for the syntax, I did want that to show up green so that I know that it's an interface and not an actual function. I wanted to do that. But here's the thing. Again, right now, it's true. It is acting as a function call, even though it's a class. But the problem is, I don't know what the future might have. And maybe later on, they will be an instance of the keyboard. So I wrote it in a way that it allows me to do that. If you lock yourself into a function now, let's say 5 games later, he's going to say, oh, you know what? I want to do this one thing. Now you're screwed because what you created was a method. And now...
No, you can create a method inside a keyboard class.
Okay, but that's what I'm saying. Because it is a class, I can create a method inside it.
Yes.
But if you started with a function, like let's say that you said static keyboard, right?
Then it will like limits me to that method.
Now imagine that 5 games later, he comes to you and tells you, you know what? I want to do something. I want to turn on, I want to disable the keyboard temporarily while the person is playing. Now it is a function. Now you're forced to actually add a property. Or rewrite all the code for 5 or 6 different games. Which you're not gonna do. You're not gonna do that, right? So what I'm doing, and this is the part that I'm trying to tell you. When you're exploring, you don't think ahead. You just test this, test that. That's good. That's fine. But when you're architecting, like creating an architecture, like thinking about the architecture, you have to plan ahead. Right now, I don't have that, but I don't know if it is going to happen. So I want to keep it open. And if at some point he says he wants X or Y, it's going to be very simple for me to say disable. You see? Or actually have a or enabled, just to make it similar to AutoHotkey, right? I will make it similar to AutoHotkey because I know the AutoHotkey syntax. So let me do it very similar to AutoHotkey because that way I will remember. But if I make it disabled, everybody's going to be like, oh, I know AutoHotkey. And then isn't it enabled? Oh yeah, let me try that. Oh, it's not gonna work. Yeah, because I chose it to be different than the normal one, right? So I think about those things in the long run, okay? Because of that, I make decisions that might seem weird at the beginning, but it just doesn't close the door on me later on. Hey, how about the mouse? Yeah, maybe I want to disable it because I'm thinking about those things as things. The keyboard is one thing. Right now, one of the things that I want to do, and the default thing that I want to do, is send keystrokes. That's basically what a keyboard is.
Yes.
But later on, maybe I want to do more things with that thing. So then let's think about it as a thing right now so that it opens the possibility to do more later on without breaking my code, without having to rewrite 10 functions, or having to do what some people do is that they have one like send keyboard and then the key, and then later on they say, oh God, I need disable keyboard, okay? And then now I have enable keyboard, and now I have set keyboard to English, and now you're noticing all the things that they have in common. They all say keyboard in the end. Yeah, that's a class.
Yeah,
they all say keyboard. So that's when a class makes sense. So I'm just thinking ahead, even though I know I'm not going to use it, and probably at some point I'm not going to use it. But if the guy comes up, because I don't know how many different games he has, okay? And for now, I'm working with one of them, okay? And I'm going to do one thing with that one. Yeah, but I don't know what is going to happen with the next game. So I don't want to close myself into a very tight position that then 10 months from now is going to be like, oh, you know what? We need to do this one thing now. And now you're screwed. Okay, so that's why I did this. But notice that I have something here that is a start, okay, method, and that it just throws an error. Why would I do that? Because
if someone tries it, this is not implemented yet.
Right, but let me tell you what. If you, by any chance, get the default implementation of the game, remember that this will give you Project Cars, will give you Assetto Corsa, but by default, if I don't understand which game you want, I will give you the game, right? The game interface. But the game interface is not going to have very specific things about each game. So for that reason, I want to lock this method to be, you cannot use that. You can use the menu, you can use the mouse, you can use the keyboard, but you cannot use this because it is not implemented, because I don't know which game you have. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And I will continue adding more methods. And what that does now is that whenever I implement one class, I am forced, I have to implement the start method, because they are, all of them, every single game is going to have a start method. Because the main idea, this is because of that project. He said, and actually when we look at it, he said that he wants to be able to click on a button. Each button launches a game that is fully automatic and takes into the race without intervention. That right here is the start method. You're going to press a button and my automation is going to start the game for you in the specific mode that you clicked. That's it. So I know, because of the project, that it doesn't matter how many games we do, all of them are going to share that. Well, because they are all going to share that, I'm going to put it in the shared class, okay? They all share a keyboard, they all share a mouse, they all share a menu, they all will start different modes, but it is not implemented in this one because I don't know which game you're talking about. So I have to know which game you're talking about. All right. And then this is the game mode or whatever. I don't know. I don't remember how I called it. But yeah. Does that make sense? So I will block you from creating a game that doesn't have that, because we need that, because that's what the project is all about. All right. So now that you have the basic here, this is the basic interface that is built upon units that I can rely on. I know that the send event is going to work. I know that the click is going to work. I know that the menu is going to work because it's relying on the send event. So all of it is relying on two functions that I know for a fact that they work because I have tested them, okay? This could be a personal function that I created, okay? If I don't want the send event and I want to create my own send function, or if I want to create my own click, or if there's a functionality that I want, but this main interface is the one that is built on the units. So if something breaks and it has to do with units, I'm gonna come here to look for it, okay? Now, for each game though, now I create a class that extends the main game. So I know that I have the menu. I know that I have the keyboard. I know that I can do a few things, right? But this class, it gives me the handle for this game. It will not give me a handle for anybody else, all right? And I now realized all the games will need a title and a handle. So let me go to the game and add those to force you to have it. So I'm gonna make sure that it doesn't matter what you do, each game, so static title, and it returns a throw non-implemented, okay? Because you must give me one, okay? And also I want to have an HWND, which is actually an instance at this point, because this depends on the instance of the game that I did. But I'm forcing you to have those. So I'm making a contract and saying every single class must have that, because I will use that in a very specific way on each game. That means it doesn't matter if you're doing Project Cops or if you're doing Assetto Corsa, I will know that I have a title and I have a handle and I have the start method every single time. It doesn't matter which game I use. It's going to be the same. It's going to be consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? So now, when I go here, yeah, go ahead.
So I have a question about, so delay 1000 is fine, but title should not be static in the game.
It depends.
Class.
It depends.
The game class.
It depends. The title, I'm just going to use it to get the handle. That's the only reason why I'm using that. And the reason why I'm putting it there is that I don't know if I'm going to use it for something else later. And if I do that, I want to change it in one spot, not in 20 spots. So right now, I only have one use for the title.
No, I have one other question. So game class also has the title property. You're extending game.
Yes.
And it
but when you create this, it replaces the game one, and this one replaces the game one.
If you do not create the title property,
then it will throw an error. If it will throw an error. So if you have class Assetto Corsa, so let's say Assetto Corsa here, and then extends game, and I don't have a title, right? And then I say
we're gonna
start is something like false, but then I try to access title, it will throw an error right there. So it's gonna tell me, because, and that's the point. I want to know that I did something wrong, that I'm missing something. So if I try to access it and I say, oh yeah, give me the Assetto Corsa title, it's gonna break. Because it will take from game, and game hasn't been implemented yet. So you have to implement it for me. I'm forcing myself to do that. And if I forget, I will get a reminder very quickly. You forgot about that. And I need it because for the starting point, notice that I will be activating the handle and I will be doing some stuff that has to do with the keyboard, okay? So I want to make sure that I have the correct handle, and this is gonna be per game, not per class, okay?
Yes.
That's
So
the
every
reason why
game
I want to do
starts
that.
differently.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but so that means I don't want to forget to implement the handle for that one.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And actually, in the end, now that we're talking about it, and this is the good thing about talking about stuff, I can make this, use this, make this static so that it takes it from the class. And now I only have to implement title. And this will always get the title for the current class, which is, in this case, is going to be project cars title, but in this case, is going to be a Assetto Corsa title, right? So it depends. But the point is, I'm just making my life easier. Why? Okay, so for Assetto Corsa, and with this, we're going to be finishing. For the start method here, I will have a lot of things that are related to this game. So this coordinate mode is just for this game. In other games, I don't know if I'm going to use the screen. It depends. Actually, this might be an option, and depending if the game was windowed or full screen or whatever, then I will use those. But for now, I'm hard coding it to this. I'm doing whatever I want, and then I go out of this. Now, for this type of game, right, it depends. Some games have free trial, solo mode. They have time trial, sorry, is what I meant, and other modes. So each game has its own list. That's the reason why the start function has to be different for each game. But the actions are gonna look exactly the same, always. Look, I go to the right, I select twice, okay? But for Assetto Corsa, I might do on the menu going right or left, but the syntax is the same. The only thing that changes is the class. So I will be able to say for Assetto Corsa, just copy the thing and just change this to Assetto Corsa. All right. And now I'm just gonna do this, duplicate it.
I think you can do game.menu also.
Sorry?
You can also do game.menu.
Yes, but that's the other point. Very good catch. Okay. So you would say, why would you not do just game directly? Well, I'm allowing myself something that I don't know about yet. Okay. Again, it's all about not locking myself. Well, right now, Assetto Corsa, well, I tried this. Okay. So in there, instead of going right, I have to go left first and then up and then select. Okay. Notice how easy it was for me to change the code because I know that the menu can only do that. So if I'm going to be working with the menu, I don't have to remember 10,000 options. I know the 6 options that I have is left, right, up, down, and select. That's it. Nothing else. So I know that that's what I can do. But then it just so happens that when I try it on Assetto Corsa, it doesn't work. Okay. Now we have a problem. Why doesn't it work? Well, at that point, I want to modify the keyboard interface. So in this case, I will make the static here, keyboard, okay? And I want to make that, or I can just simply modify the class itself. Class menu, and I'm gonna do the same interface I had, okay? Extends game menu, so it's almost the same. But the left, up, and down, let's do left, up, they do something else. In the project cars, it is calling my game keyboard, which was doing a send event. But now in this one, I don't want to do that. I want to send input. Because that's the one that works. And now here, I just want to do it this way. So now, What happens is my code doesn't change at all. It's the same code. But what it's doing on the background is different. Okay? And now I can extend something that already exists. Oh, the only problem I'm having is that whenever I hit select, it was not working. Well, instead of sending the enter key, well, I had to send shift enter, because in this game, that's what I have to do. Now, everything else stays exactly the same, but the select has been modified to do something in this one game that the others don't do. But the code is exactly the same. I don't have to change how I think about the game.
That's cool.
Okay, so that's what I'm setting myself up for. So now I can just grab this, put it in its own file in the Assetto Corsa now. Okay, so this is going to be AHK. Where's the AHK files? Right? It's not here. Here. There it is. And then I'm going to call it Assetto Corsa. And now I have my interface for this game. And instead of solo, they don't have solo. They just have freestyle. Okay. And then the game, nothing changed. What I'm going to do here is now append this, Assetto Corsa. Now I'm going to duplicate this and say Assetto Corsa here. And now this part changes. Whoops, not this one. Assetto Corsa. There you go. I finished. I already have another interface. See what I mean? It makes my life easier to write it this way.
Can you go to the Assetto Corsa?
Yeah.
Line 5, 6, 7 can have this in there.
Not exactly. Remember, this is an instance method. So this will refer to the instance, not the class. This class only belongs to this subclass only belongs to the class. And that's how I want it, because this is internal. I don't want people touching this. This is something that only my class can do. But remember, when they're out here, what they get is a client. And this client is the R controller. And here I will say Assetto Corsa. By the way, I will just add it into my options here. All right. Okay. Okay, that's what it can return. Now it allows me to just autocomplete, but now I got a client. What they can do with this client is very limited. They can only call the start function. That's it. They cannot do anything else. Does that make sense? That's what I want. They can only access for those who are going to be using this, because the client that is going to be doing this, he doesn't know the code that I just wrote. He doesn't want to learn the whole thing. He just wants a couple of things that are very specific. One of them is the start function. That is regarding this. And I haven't built the event builder. Okay. So this is something else. All right. So now, but he only has access to that, nothing else. Whatever I make to have access in the instance, that's what he can use. Everything else is internal to us, and we can use it in here, and we can do a few other things, but he can't. Unless he knows about it, and unless he strictly says, you know what, I'm going to override all that, and I want to call the Assetto Corsa menu left. Then he can do it, okay? But he has to specifically run that. And then, remember, this is tied to Assetto Corsa. He cannot use it anywhere else, because it is tied to the class. Now, check this out. The start method is not tied to Assetto Corsa. If I decided later on, both of the games have the solo mode. Oh, you know what? This one, I want to change it to the other game. The only thing you have to do is change this part and say project cars. And now that code also worked. You see what I mean? It's very easy for me to change one thing. And now it's working for both games. It's just the fact that I want a very simple interface that only has 3 or 4 methods. Well, not exactly, because it depends. Now that he's talking about something else, this is new. The event builder sounds like a GUI. Okay, so this is a GUI, graphical user interface, that you're going to create. And in here, each person is going to have a vehicle, a track, the direction, sessions, track. There's a lot of things that you need in that GUI, okay? So this is a very complex GUI. But there's a lot of those things that are, for all games, very similar. In all of the games, you have to pick a car, okay? So that's for sure. The car that you're picking, in all of them, you can pick a car. Which cars you're gonna get depend on the game. That's when this is gonna be a class that says, okay, one of the things, the start is one thing. Get car list. Okay, so now that is a method or a function. That's a very interesting error right there. I don't know what that is. The word list is being highlighted in a very weird way. List cars. Oh, wow, that's crazy. I don't know what is happening there. Oh, yeah, this is what happened in the game itself. Okay, so I can have a method that is public, which means all of my classes are going to have this one method that what it does is that it gets a list of all the cars. It returns out a list of all the cars in a very specific format. What is the format? Probably a map or an array, okay? So it returns an array, okay? So in that case, the list of cars that I have available for this game will be different than the list of cars that I have for the other game. But this is something that is public, which means my class down here I should be able to say, you know what, I get the controller here for project cars, and now I want to client.list cars. And it doesn't matter if I switch to the other game now. I hope that this exists. It has to exist. Okay? How do I make sure that it exists? Well, go into the game and making a contract. I want all of them to have list cars. Okay? And probably I will need some parameters there or whatever, but I will have that. But now that is a contract. Every single time I extend one of my classes, if I don't implement that method, then if I try to use it, it will throw an error telling me, hey, it is not implemented. Go ahead and implement it. Do you get the idea? All of this is to get to show you, hey, what I just did is a different type of coding that you have to sit down and think about it. And in my case, yeah, I have some sort of experience to come up with this, and probably my experience is limited. So maybe I'm making some mistakes that some other architects are going to look at it and say, yeah, don't do that because that's going to be a problem. But in this case, we should start with this at least because of two things. This is code that is for a client. So the best is to think ahead. And all the time, what you're thinking is what probably he might want to do that I'm not thinking about yet. Hey, that's exactly why I made this a class and not a method. because I was thinking, God damn it, do I do it a method or do I do it as a class? Then I realized, no, I want it as a class.
I would do in line number 8, I would do a method, and I should not create an instance because
okay, yeah, you're calling like send or something like that, keyboard send.
Yeah,
I agree with you. But this is the point. Right now, I'm just experimenting. I was just testing. Yeah, I was just testing. Does it work? Great. Later on, if that turns out to be an issue, then yeah, changing that is not going to be too hard. But why am I doing that? Because I wanted the syntax to be like this. Look, game keyboard up. If it is not like that, if you make a static send, now your keyboard looks like this.
Each key press is kind of a creating an instance, and that instance goes like after doing the action, it destroys.
That's what I was gonna say. Like, I'm not saying that it is not doing that. It's true. That's exactly what it's doing. Do I care enough for that? I don't know. It depends. Right now, with my testing in this game, I had to add a 1 second delay between actions. So do I care if it creates an instance and closes it? No. Every time I do an action, I'm taking a 1 second delay, because if I made it lower than that, it was breaking in certain spots. So because of that, yeah, I like how it looks. It makes it easier for me to know what I'm going to do. Because of that, I don't really mind that much, but you're totally right. This creates an instance and stops it, but is simpler to think about, and it is simpler to write. Notice that in here, keyboard up, and the other one is keyboard send up. That is 5 additional characters that I have to do over and over again. Do I want to keep doing that? No. My point is trying to make my life easier when I'm writing the code. That's why I decided for that. Now, later on, if it becomes a problem, then yeah, let's see how difficult it is to write it out. I don't think it's going to be difficult, because if I say static send,
it is just this class.
I just select them all and say keyboard.send. Oh, done. That's it. Or a find and replace. Simple as that. You know, so it makes, I know that even though I made a choice, that I understand your point, like, oh, that's a weird choice. Yeah, if I need to change it, don't worry, it's not going to be too hard to fix it, because I'm not planning on using keyboard anywhere else. You will find that in project cars, I'm not using keyboard. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
Because in project cars, I'm not allowed to use that. I'm not allowed to use the other class like that. I'm allowed to use the menu, nothing else. You see what I mean? Like, that's not my point. So that if I need to fix something with the keyboard, I know that I have to come back here, and that's when I'm going to fix it. Make sense?
Yes.
So in this case, the only thing I do think, I know that this part is going to be a little bit difficult to do. It is planning ahead. Every time you make a decision, that is going to bite you in the ass later. That's 100% sure. Whatever you do right now is going to be a problem. I know for a fact that me choosing a class right now is going to be a problem later. But I think between choosing a class and then choosing a method, for me, it was like, what happens if I'm going to do this and that? What happens if I want to extend that? Oh, that's going to be a problem if it is a method. I want to avoid that problem, and let me choose this one. So that choice right now is going to be a problem down the line. But I think it is going to be a smaller problem than locking myself into a method, and then the guy saying, oh, I need to disable the keyboard. Oh, I need 200 methods now, because he wants to have very different actions for the keyboard and stuff like that. So going back to the main point, the reason why you have to think like this, and the reason why you have to think always forward, never right now. Whatever you're doing right now, whenever you're going to type it, just stop and say, okay, hold on. If I do it like this, what is going to be the problem later? And that comes with experience. The more problems you get, the more experience you get. You see how you change how you do the GUIs, right? That now you put them in a variable, right? It's because you have the issues.
let me share you something with the
Before you
ASM.
do that, let me finish up this thought. This is my last thought, is you always have to be thinking ahead in this type of software for clients, because you're writing it for him, but do you know what he's gonna do? He's gonna put it in hundreds of machines that he has across the country, and those hundreds of machines are gonna be using it for thousands of clients. So whatever you're doing here has to be very stable, because this is going to be used up by thousands and thousands of people. So now every mistake you're making right now is not one computer, it's hundreds. It's hundreds of computers that if they do it every day, thousands of people, then you're going to be thousands and thousands of errors. So every minimal tiny thing that you do becomes a huge problem later down the line. So this is the reason why in this case you have to take care, because if you don't, then the client is not going to be satisfied. Oh no, we get 5 errors every time a client gets there, you know? So you don't want that. Everything is use good units, use the AutoHotkey ones, build your own if you want, but build good ones, stable, that do one thing and that's it. A message box doesn't also show a tooltip, okay? So a message box shows a message box. That's the only thing it does. It doesn't show tooltips, it doesn't do tray tips, it doesn't do icons, just the message box. Build good interfaces for yourself to make your life easier when you're writing code. You're building your own syntax, however you want it to look like, because it is easier for you and other developers. That's it. When you have all those two things good, then the user interface, don't let them see errors, mistakes, and stuff. Anything that is an error is a question for them. Hey, something went wrong. Do you want to do this instead? And they have the choice, yes or no. So by the time you get to this point, things should be stable enough so that in the end, if there's something wrong, it's very rare. That's it. That was my final thing. If you have questions or anything you want to say, then go ahead now.
I think what you showed me, I am tends to move that way already ready.
Yes, that's
so
good.
I kind of plan ahead to like minimize the issues that we like. That's comes with the experience. You're right, because whenever you have a hardship, you learn something. So yeah, that's correct. And I was about to show you that same thing. Let me show you.
Okay, go ahead and show me.
So you can see that ASM has multiple GUIs. So
yes,
it has task, assign hotkeys, clip history, editor swap, and executable settings, and find replace, which is used a lot. And most of my GUIs has this set parent, because sometimes when I go to the settings, I want to disable the main parent GUI.
Right.
And then when I hide it, I enable it. So I just
exactly. The show and hide. That was a problem that I had before when I created my first program. Like whenever you do that, you want to disable certain things, but when you hide it, then you want to enable them. Yeah.
And
Very
now
good.
you can see that all my GUIs has the parents. And when I create a new instance in here, so this is my new instance. It is static. So whenever I run it, it launches it, and I am setting parent.
Now, notice how all of your classes are standard. So if I look at your code later on, if I want to know something, I know that it has that. It is standard. Now, if you make it that way, you're making your life easier later down the line.
Yeah.
So that's great.
So that's how I am learning from you already, and yeah,
great.
I always follow your suggestions. So and this example that you wrote about the class is so meaningful, and I want to write that way so everyone can understand my code.
That is correct. That's good.
Yeah.
So that people can fix it later. And actually, let me ask you this. Let's compare. How easy has it been fixing AHK script maker like ASM? When there's an error, how easy it is to fix it in comparison to other code that you have written before, in which it is very hard to find this stuff?
Yeah, right now it's so easy to do it because Joe tell me that you should be moving that menu, so I just go to the menu file.
Right.
And
exactly.
And Joe tell me this find replace having some issues, so I just go to the find
you go
replace.
to the find replace. Yeah. Exactly.
And then the scintilla actions. So I go to the actions, and I can fix those actions.
That is correct.
So
now, in the end, in the end, that is basically this great that you're moving in that direction because it makes your life easier, right? You spend less time trying to code, but also if I go to this code, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna actually. That's how I found the error of the tooltip not showing in certain situations. I have never seen ASM actually, the code. So when Joe told me, oh, let's make this, and we look at it, I was like, I don't know where to find it. I found it in less than 10 minutes. Joe saw, we made a bit, we were making the video and we found where it was with Git and the fact that everything is organized. Like both things is what makes it so easy to work with, even with code that you don't know. And that's great because if you're not there, you're having a problem or you're free on vacations or whatever, and somebody has to fix that, they can just sit down, look at the code for half an hour or less, and they say, oh, probably if it is this icon in this GUI that is not showing up, it's probably in the GUI folder in one of these files. He's gonna find it, and he's gonna get there, and he's gonna find it, right?
You know what's really ironic though, Isaias? What you just described is also how when we build scripts and we identify windows for things to act on, or it's the same thing. It makes it easier for AutoHotkey to find what to act on, right? It's just filtering down. Oh, okay, now I know where to go do this on, and then you're not looking everywhere, right? Like
exactly. So I'm sorry that I took that long to explain that thing, but I do want you to understand the importance. This project, when you started off with it, is not a project for one person. It's a project for thousands of people. So any little thing becomes like a very big problem. So just take a little time. And if you have never done it, then use AI, ask questions. What is the best way to do this? What problems might come up if I do this? And if it is not AI, talk to Joe. Hey, Joe, have you ever? Because I always, for example, if I'm doing scraping or web stuff, I always ask Joe, have you done this before? Why don't I ask AI? Because I know that AI can make mistakes sometimes. And as I don't know about the topic at all, maybe I think the mistake is okay, and that's not true. So I usually, if I know that Joe has done something, I just go to Joe, have you ever done this before? He says, yes. Okay, so let me talk about it. If he says no, then I say, okay, we talk about it anyways. But then in the end, I say, like, let me go ahead and use AI to see if there's any other things. But I do all of that before I write the code, not like, oh, I know what I'm doing. Let me go ahead and do it. Have you done it before? Have you ever automated a game? No? Then you don't know. You will know now all the problems that you're going to have when you try. Like, for example, right now, with that same game, Project Cars, the menu worked perfectly fine. The code that I created for moving through the menu, perfectly fine. But if the game is running and I want to send the escape key, it doesn't work. No idea why. And I tried with send event, send play, send input. I've tried many different ways. I try. Oh, by the way, if I open the game, none of my hotkeys work. Even if I create an AutoHotkey script and launch it after the game started. So if the game is minimized, all of my hotkeys work for AutoHotkey scripts. When I put the game, then the hotkeys don't work.
Is it in a different environment then?
It's not only that. I think when you open the game, it replaces all of the hotkeys for whatever reason. I don't know why. Maybe it is because they want to use it, but maybe it's for security reasons as well. Or maybe it is on a different level. I don't know exactly what. You know what? That's a great question. Maybe the gaming mode is in the window is in a different mode, and maybe it's in not admin but elevated. I don't know. Something is up that none of my hotkeys work, and I'm like, that's crazy. But only when the game is playing. By the way,
you know how. To your point, like let's say they were both AutoHotkey scripts that you're talking about instead of a game, right? We know when I launch a new script that has a hotkey from another script, it's going to override it because it's new.
Override it, yeah.
Can we build a timer into your other one to say, hey, after 30 seconds, restart?
Go ahead. I will try that. That's a great example of something that I would try, because the problem was. And actually, Irfan, look at this. One of the things that I was planning on doing, I think it should be shown in one of the things that I removed. Hold on. It was a lot of code that was removed. It was not 5. Nope. It was more than that. Maybe this one. Nope. Not that one. Oh, hold on. Nope. That's not that. Oh, so I didn't even have it. Okay. I thought it was there. Okay. Sorry. I thought I had that, but what happens is when I created the well, I could do the timeline, I think. When I created this, here we go. We got that's not the one that I want. Is this one here? This one here. I had a function to exit the game. Okay. So I had the start to launch the game, and I had an exit to exit the game. And the problem here was this part, just that one right there didn't work. And look, I was trying, you see what we talked about, like overriding the keyboard? That's what I did. I overrode the keyboard for my test. Look, I had the keyboard specifically. I overrode it to try to fix that. It didn't work either. So
backspace working?
Sorry?
So line 43 backspace works instead.
Backspace works. So here, all of the other ones for moving through the menu, all of it was working fine. It's just escape. Fine. The keyboard works perfectly fine. And the escape key also works fine. Everything works fine in the menu. But once the game starts, it seems that is either a different window that is elevated or something else is going on. Or like, for example, what Joe said, like it replaced all of my keyboard shortcuts. And then I have to set a timer and try again. So those kind of things is what we don't know about. And if you code yourself into a corner, what is going to happen is that you're going to write some code that later on you're going to find another game that things are going to be very complicated, but now you're cornered because your code is written in one way that now is going to be very hard for you to do it differently, and so on and so forth. So that's the idea in this project. If you have questions about how to do certain things, just talk to me. We talk about the design, and then you go ahead and create the code if you want. But basically, be very careful.